Hey guys, Paul Morrow here again for OpsDesk.org with our Thursday night OpsDesk related news recap. All right, let's start off right away with yesterday's news, actually, kind of breaking today, and I'm surprised this hasn't caught more traction. James Comey is on the hot seat here. And where I'm going with this is the stuff coming out from Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. They both said they weren't going to do a lot of interviews, and so when they do one, you got to pay attention because, they're delivering the messages they want people to really hear. And their message is all about Comey. And they're saying that they've discovered, quote-unquote, secret files, stuff that went outside the normal reporting chain and that don't seem to be memorialized in 302s. That's the Bureau's workhorse document that he seems to have been trying to keep away from Congress and elsewhere. And that puts you in very precarious position if you are James Comey, because you could be opening yourself up to things like a perjury charge relative to Congress, because you got to testify to Congress, and even like maybe an obstruction charge, because remember, they pulled him in to investigate all the stuff that happened relative to Donald Trump. Now, I'm not going to go into all of that now. I'm going to do that. This weekend is going to be our Sunday Ops report. I'm going to write all of this up because there are a number of different strands here to come together, and I think that Kash and Dan are on the scent. And Kash even said, look, you're going to be shocked. He's saying that what we have discovered, we're going to get it out. We're doing everything we can to declassify, but it's going to shock the conscience, which is kind of a legalistic term, but it means what it sounds like. And apparently they're getting good internal cooperation. Apparently people there are like, thank God you guys came along. And I got to tell you, the Bureau takes a beating in many circles, particularly sometimes these days on the right. But I got to tell you, I had plenty of battles with them when I was working. But I got to tell you, I worked with too many good agents for me to join that parade. I won't do it. I still know good FBI agents. They want to do the job, and they are as mortified by the nonsense, the acrobatics of Comey and company as the rest of us are. I mean, everybody knows the stories. We've read the books. We've seen the specials. Comey, I think he's got real trouble, and I'm going to steal a theory from Jimmy Fallon. I was on radio with him today. Jimmy made a great point. He actually was contending that the whole shell thing with 8647 was Comey getting out of ahead of this stuff because he knew it was coming. And I think that's likely true because you got to say to yourself, Comey must have sources still inside the Bureau. And they are loyalists to him, and they probably are telling him, you got trouble. Because they found this, they found that, they're looking at this, and it could be that he's trying to get out ahead so he can start saying things like, oh, it's just retaliation against me, this is Donald Trump, which is what Tish James is doing. Hey, retaliation, schmaliation. If you did it, you did it, and that's where the investigation should go. All right, so I think that, like I said, we're going to do that on the Ops Desk this weekend, but I think that this is something to really keep your eye on, and I'm surprised it didn't catch a little bit more traction in the news today. So I wanted to highlight that. I want to highlight something else that's just breaking. Two NYPD detectives who are members of Eric Adams' security detail. He's the mayor. As the mayor of New York, he gets a security detail. Two of them just placed on desk duty, all right, which is a demotion. You're on there. That's a very prestigious command to be under the mayor's protection detail. You get a ton of overtime. Really, you're not getting a whole lot of oversight. You work for the mayor. Even a police commissioner is going to stay away from that. That's just a political dynamic. And, you get a lot of perks. You're driving the mayor around. I'm sure they have take-home cars and all that kind of stuff. And these guys now have been demoted to desk duty. Now, I don't know where the desk is. It's probably in Gracie Mansion. But here's why. Apparently, they worked security at some point, and maybe up until the two crypto perps grabbed that Italian crypto mogul, took him into that townhouse that they rented for $60,000 a month, and took a chainsaw to him in order to get his crypto wallet password. These two cops apparently worked for one of those perps. It's not disclosed which one yet. This is all according to the reporting in the New York Daily News. Here's the thing that gives me a little bit of pause, however. One of these detectives reportedly picked up the victim, the Italian mogul, at the airport and drove him into town. I don't know if he drove him right to the townhouse, but that says to me, how much did he know? Was this cop in on this thing? And, there's a canard that cops are always going to cover for each other. And the thin blue line and all that stuff. I never knew a good cop, and almost I don't think I knew any real bad cops. I was fortunate. I didn't have to bump into, well, one command I was in, they did grab a couple of guys, but I didn't know them. I was very new. But my point is, I never heard anybody stick up for these guys because they were corrupt. All right, they ended up getting arrested, and everybody, frankly, was kind of like F these guys because what they did casts a shadow on the rest of us who are not taking money, and these guys were. So I'm not sticking up for these guys, and if it does turn out that they were involved, I hope they were not, but if it does turn out that way as the story advances, well, you're not going to hear me stick up for them, but it is another potential black eye for Eric Adams. Another case of skullduggery that is adjacent to our mayor, who, as we know, was pardoned by Donald Trump. And obviously this is not going to help his reelection efforts any, especially if it starts to really go bad, as it could. All right, real quick, a couple of other more stories here that I think, fell through the cracks that I think very interesting. I want to pull two strands together, and that's what you do as a news analyst. The lawsuit from Donald Trump on Paramount. He's suing them for $20 billion would-be dollars, okay? Paramount is the parent company of CBS. Why is he suing? Because of the doctored 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris. And they did it. I'm sorry, but they did it. Anybody who looks at the transcript sees that they cleaned up her interview. They made her look a lot more coherent, and very clearly, we can see why. And this has caused all kinds of drama at 60 Minutes, like anybody gives a crap. Oh, the head editor resigned. I can't do my editorial duties, like anybody cares anymore about. These guys not gotten the memo that they don't matter anymore. All right? They are white noise that's in the background, as Gutfeld said. That it's not really, they don't have the purchase that they used to. All right? And here's the thing that I find interesting, though, to pull two strands together. Trump doesn't want to settle, all right? The head of Paramount has a toe in the water relative to settling. She's maybe looking at a woman named Shari Redstone, who I believe, as I understand it, inherited the whole empire from her elderly husband who died. They don't want her to settle, that is, the people underneath her in Paramount, but also in CBS, because it's a bribe to Donald Trump. If you settle this, you're just enabling him. Hey, listen. Enable Shemable. You did it. If you did it, you did it. And it looks to me like they did it. She's got pressure to settle this thing because she's trying to do a merger with another big company, Skydance Media. They make the Mission Impossible movies and all of that. So she's got an incentive to settle. They don't want her to do it because of their journalistic integrity. But in my estimation, they did it. And here's where I want to pull something in. I think what could be part of discovery, if it ever goes that far, is Scott Pelley's commencement speech. That thing we saw yesterday when he was acting like Shakespeare, Macbeth, one thing's up here, another thing's down here. Clear evidence of the mindset on 60 Minutes. He's the anchor man on one of the anchors on 60 Minutes. And it's a clear window into the mindset of that place. So if you're trying to demonstrate that they did it with malice aforethought, and you're trying to say, which is kind of the standard for a defamation claim, well, and that's where I'm sure the case grounds in. I would grab Pelley's thing and say, well, look at this. I mean, is there any doubt that he's very clearly talking about Donald Trump in his commencement speech? There's the mindset, and it's only going to hurt 60 Minutes. If you see where Shari Redstone and her lawyers are, when that commencement speech comes out, there had to be a facepalm. So I haven't heard anybody make that connection yet, but I think Scott Pelley, if it gets that far, could end up testifying. And he's going to wish that he hadn't done that silly speech, which I thought was, as Shakespeare himself said, there's no fool like an old fool. That's my second Shakespeare reference there, but there really is no fool like an old fool, and Pelley just proved it. All right, I want to go to two more quick stories here that I think matter. Number one, enormous takedown today in New York City by the feds. Great job. $66 million welfare fraud, EBT fraud. Now, when I was working in intelligence, we had a lot of these cases because the money went overseas, because the bodegas here, the small grocery stores New York City has, all of the bogies had EBT terminals, and they were doing all kinds of fraud, and the money would go overseas to bad guy areas that we were concerned about, areas of Yemen that were Al-Qaeda controlled, other areas I won't talk about, but that was what was going on. Well, today, $66 million. They had 160 fake terminals. They must have set up EBT terminals where people were doing the swipes. it's a welfare system for very often indigents, and they have these cards. It's like a credit card. It's like a government-issued credit card, and the card is used like a credit card. It's like a swipe, and they're supposed to be buying staples with it. Bread, milk, things like that. The fraud generally comes into, they would go into the bogey and they would say, okay, give me $20 cash. Swipe the card for $10 in bread, milk, butter, and I walk out with $10. The store owner would keep 10. The government gets charged 20. It's supposed to be used for food, for medicine, things that you really need, but they would just take the cash, and it was generally drug addicts. They would go buy drugs. I never arrested anybody who didn't have 5, 6, 10 EBT cards on them. All right, it was very, very common. Anyway, the feds took down a massive case today. The names are interesting, though. The court reported mastermind, according to the press release, is a guy named Michael Kehoe who lives on Long Island, and then all of the rest of the arrestees, the names kind of track to what we used to see, which is money going overseas. The names Mohammed Nawafla, Omar, something I can't pronounce, Gamul, Abaid, Imad, Abdalwada, etc., etc. These were the kinds of names that we would see. And it's not a pejorative because they're Islamic. I'm not saying that, but I'd like to see where these what nations these people are from. This feels to me like the Egyptian-Palestinian world. Maybe they come from southern Jordan. It was very common, and they were very good at it. The money would go right out of the country, very hard to track. But we had a number of cases doing this where we were able to track the money to some serious bad guys, and that was always important. I want to close with one last thing. Story out of L.A. today just shows you how far gone our cities really can be. There was a big SCOTUS case that came out about 6-9 months ago that I was talking about, and that was relative to homeless encampments. SCOTUS came out on the side of sanity and said you can move them along. All right, it was brought out of Phoenix, and I want to say a California city, maybe Sacramento, I forget. Phoenix was one of the main drivers, and it went up through the circuit and then up to SCOTUS because they were having a real homeless problem. They wanted to move these people, and the homeless advocates came out of the woodwork. You can't move them. You can't move them. SCOTUS said you can move them. But those decisions, which I thought was going to be important, they're only as good as your willingness to enforce. And in this case, apparently they didn't enforce because in L.A., this horrible story, here's a doctor who, her name is Tahani Solomon, and she's got her medical office, and there's a homeless camp on the roof of the building. Now, I don't know how many stories the building is, but apparently it was close enough to her office that it created an unsafe environment. There were numerous fires in the building and coming from the roof. I guess they were building fires to cook hot dogs or something. And there was garbage. There was all kinds of debris. So she picked up and she moved out. And the point is, this is our blue cities these days. We don't have the laws to enforce, and when we do have the laws to enforce, we don't use them. They're only as good as your willingness to use them. And Karen Bass in L.A., I'm sorry, is another failed blue city mayor. And, you hear all of this stuff come around the blue cities. Oh, we're turning it around, shootings it down. This is great, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, you know what? That may be the case. Shootings may be going down, but the quality of life stuff we've all been on about, me included, constantly, is driving people and businesses out. All of the big blue cities that dominate certain blue states, what am I talking about? New York, Chicago, Illinois, L.A., California, I could go on. They're all losing people in droves, and they're all going to Florida, Texas, to red states because they have safety, a better quality of life, and they have responsive government, and they're not taxed to death. It's not really complicated. Don't expect this trend to change anytime soon. Our blue cities remain in trouble. Don't believe the narrative. And that's why guys like Pritzker, who think that somehow or other they are going to be the next president and get a nomination, I don't see it, pal. Not until Chicago, L.A., New York, Memphis, San Francisco, Oakland, Portland, Seattle, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., until this nutjob archipelago cleans up its act. Because right now, our cities are in trouble and they're circling the drain, and people are leaving in droves, and that means the tax base goes, and it only gets worse. We've been through it before. Look at the 70s and 80s. I'm old enough to remember. Paul Morrow for the Ops Desk. That's Thursday. Hope you guys have a safe night. We'll see you back here soon.